good morning, and welcome to the Africa Weekly Talk. Today's subject on the docket is about Nigeria's 2023 presidential election, as well as the general elections that took place yesterday, February 25th, 2023. These elections might be Nigeria's most important election in the past 2 to 3 decades, because this election is going to project the direction of Nigeria's socioeconomic development in the next 2 to 3 decades to come. And so this makes this election very, very important to Nigerians as well as to the continent of Africa. Yes, there have been some allegations of allegations of fraud and violence in some places. But from all the reports I have read so far, in terms of international organizations that are there monitoring these elections, this election is pretty much way better than the last election that was held some years back. So from the reports so far that I have heard and I have read, this election is pretty much better. And there have also been some social media video posts of Kogi State, where allegedly, the governor of the state, Yaya Bello, had some thugs excavate roads to prevent constituents from going to their precincts to cast their ballots and all that stuff. And apparently, this was done because he's scared to lose, or his party losing in that constituency. But eventually, I hope everything was settled and the people were able to cast their votes like they're supposed to. I get it. Election fraud, election violence, and all that happens everywhere in the world. Even in the United States of America, it happens. Every year in America, people are convicted of election fraud. Just this past year, a woman was convicted in Georgia of filing multiple election application forms. So it happens. So in every part of the world, even in the great democracies like the United States, there are going to be election fraud. But the difference between what happens in America and what happens in most African countries and third world countries is that because the rule of law works in America's democratic system, when these things happens, the prosecutors, the attorney, state attorney, the Justice Department will follow it up and file charges against the perpetrators, and eventually they'll be convicted and be imprisoned or sent to jail. A clear case in point is the last presidential election in the United States, where you had Biden versus Trump, where Trump supporters on January 6th stormed the Capitol to deny the vice president the certification of the electoral results. And in the course of that, they created a lot of damage. And you had the liberal media in America talking about Trump and his supporters are destroying American democracy and this and that and all that stuff. At the end of the day, what America showed the world is that its democracy is cast in stone. And in the end, the Justice Department, as well as the FBI, look at the various tapes, and what did they do? They were able to charge and prosecute everybody that was involved in that illegal act. And most of these guys are in prison right now as I'm speaking. You had sons turning in their own parents, fathers, and daughters turning in their mothers who participated in that criminal act. And today, they are all in jail. And some people are still being prosecuted. So that is the difference with the United States and the Western world and the rest of the third world countries when it comes to these things about democracy and elections and all that stuff. At the end of the day, in America and most developed democracies, when people act in this illegal manner, they will be brought to justice. So they are prosecuted and imprisoned or sent to jail. But in Nigeria, it's not going to happen. So whatever that has been going on in terms of people blocking roads and denying people, and with all this violence that according to some news outlets, at the end of the day, because the rule of law doesn't exist within our systems, these people will end up getting away with it. But if the rule of law works like it's supposed to do, then most of these people will think twice before they enact these stupid acts, just in the name of protecting their candidates and trying to still stay in power and all that stuff. I mean, if you're a governor of a state and you're going to act like this, you don't deserve to be a governor. I'm sorry. You don't deserve to represent anybody with that kind of mindset. As a matter of fact, you're supposed to be put in jail right after the elections. If exactly what they are saying happened, if allegedly, like he said, allegedly, it's alleged, but if it is true, then that governor needs to be prosecuted and be brought to justice. And that is the only way that is going to send us a clear message to all those thugs who've been following candidates in the name of party politics and causing havoc to their own citizens, But this election is very, very important to the continent of Africa as well, and to some extent to the world. And the reason being that Nigeria is Africa's biggest economy. And Nigeria is pretty much Africa, and Africa is Nigeria. I don't care what anybody says. That is a fact. If you want to know the importance of Nigeria, go talk to any American State Department official, or go to the EU and ask them, they will tell you. Nigeria is the most important country in Africa and is projected to be the 10th biggest economy in the world. I mean, the 10th biggest economy in the world by 2030 to 2040. It is projected to be that. And secondly, Nigeria also is projected to be the third biggest country in the world, behind India and China by 2045, 2050. So that shows you the importance of Nigeria in the near future, not just to Africa, but also to the world. So this election is a big deal. It is a big deal because basically this is going to project the direction of the country. It's going to project whether the country is going to move forward in terms of its socioeconomic development, privatization, and access to foreign investments, and curb down on corruption, fraud, and all that stuff. Or it's going to move backwards to the same old, corrupt systems, grafts, crony capitalism, and all of that stuff. So it's a big deal. And it plays a big role for the continent of Africa. Because like I stated earlier, Nigeria is Africa and Africa is Nigeria. If you look at Nigeria's movie industry right now, you look at the music industry and where it is in the world today, all Nigeria needs is good governance. Good governance to propel it to the next level of its socioeconomic development. Now, Nigeria used to be the number one private foreign investment destination of American businesses in the 70s. As a matter of fact, American businesses in the early 70s preferred to go establish business in Nigeria than any other country in the world. I'm not making this up. Go and do your own research and you find out. Nigeria was considered to be their number one preference than even Japan in the 70s. Long before they started investing in Asia, Nigeria was their number one preference. I mean, I'm talking about these were American businesses, American companies. Nigeria was their number one preference of investment. And what happened? Because of the military coups and the corrupt governments that came about, what did it do? It derailed all those investments that American companies had planned for Nigeria. And that is what also caused Nigeria to be in this situation that they are in today. So if you look at it as a whole, this election, in terms of socioeconomic development and in terms of the economic development of Africa as a whole, it's a big deal. It's a big deal because it's going to project the direction this country is going to move in, whether it's going to move forward or it's going to move backwards. And hopefully, the Nigerian people will make the right decision. Right decision that's not going to be based on tribalism or it's going to be based on religionism, but rather it's going to be based on ideas. Ideas where whoever they choose as their leader will project ideas that will bring socioeconomic development, that will curb poverty, that will stop corruption, and that will move the country in the right direction for the next decades, and so on and so on and so forth. So it's a big deal. It's a big deal, and I hope that the people of Nigeria make the right choice when it comes to that. I mean, in terms of the level of corruption right now, in terms of the rule of law and all that stuff, I get that. You know, I strongly believe that one day Africa will also move on from this corruption, as well as the rule of law will come into place, and Africa will be able to have a very vibrant democratic process and systems. Because if you look at the history of the West, let's say countries like Italy, Spain, and even France, and you look at even England, even though I will not include England in it so much, but let's say Italy, Spain, France, Portugal, and all those Western European countries today that we all look at, that we all talk about their democratic processes and all that stuff. And even in the United States, there were times about 100 years ago that most of these countries also had very fraudulent electoral systems. They also have very fraudulent electoral system in terms of elections of judges. You had these criminal networks that were all involved, their political systems. But because of the rule of law that started to take shape, especially in most of these countries, after their revolutions, it changed the trajectory of their democratic processes. And today we can look at them and say, oh, they are very democratic countries, they are in the right direction, they are democracy and all that stuff. But once upon a time, they were also just as bad as most African countries that you see today. So there's hope. There's hope that one day all these, corrupt systems in terms of electoral fraud and violence that takes place in most African elections and all that stuff, there's hope that one day all these things will come to pass. And hopefully, it shouldn't take long for it to take place in Africa in the next maybe 20 or 30 years. Even in America, it used to be like in terms of some of the local elections in, let's say, New York, where some of the judges that were being elected were being sponsored by mafia bosses. Just in the 30s, 40s. It was very prevalent in America. You go to states like Chicago, Illinois, which is Chicago, and then you go to places like Las Vegas, where the mafias were in control in most of those states. They had their own criminal, enterprises that also control the electoral systems there. But what the United States government did was that the FBI and the Justice Department were able to knock these things down and prosecute all those involved, and were able to bring down these networks. And today, when we talk about elections and we talk about American democracy, you don't hear of these things. But these things also existed in the United States, in some pockets of the United States localities. But because of the rule of law, which is the key to the foundation of every democracy, because without the rule of law, you can never have a vibrant democratic systems. I'm sorry. It is the rule of law that makes a democracy a democratic country, vibrant. Because at the end of the day, you can vote all you want. You can go and cast your ballot to this or that, if in your presidential or parliamentarian or congressional elections and all that stuff. But if that country lacks the rule of law, which is to be the foundation of every democracy, if you don't have that rule of law, your country or your democracy is not going to go anywhere. Because at the end of the day, that is what holds democracies in place. That is the key to every democratic society that lives and exists on this planet today. If you're going to have a vibrant democratic society, you have to have rule of law. And unfortunately, we don't have it now. But maybe, hopefully, it's going to come soon. And all starts with leadership. All starts with leadership. So this Nigerian election that took place yesterday, hopefully, the people of Nigeria will choose the right leaders that will have the projection of the country for the near future to be what the people will envision when they are going to cast their vote for them. So hopefully, if that happens, then eventually everything will be in place for Nigeria. Because Nigeria, like I said earlier, is the biggest economy in Africa. Nigeria is also the most populous country in Africa and is projected to be the third populous country in the world. So Nigeria has a lot of clout in terms of the world standards when it comes to economics, as well as even when you talk about energy and other factors also. You go to China, you ask the Chinese government, the most important country in Africa is Nigeria. Any part of the world that you go to, the most important country in Africa is Nigeria because of its population as well as its economy, size of its economy. And that's how it's going to be. So if Nigeria is able to get this act of this election in place and chooses the right path, right progressive path, where it's going to project good socioeconomic development for its citizens, that can also be where African countries can also follow the footprints of Nigeria in the near future. So we don't know the outcome yet of the elections. I heard there are some tallies going on right now, and hopefully within the next 5 days, the final results of the elections will be out for the people to know what path is this great country going to choose, whether to move forward with progressive ideas, socioeconomic development, and cut away corruption, fraud, crony capitalism, and all that stuff, and move on and become part of the developed systems that exist in this modern world today, or move backwards to the same old corrupt, fraudulent governments that have torn down this great country, that have made poverty as if like a part of the system in Nigeria today. If we choose the right path in Nigeria, I hope all will be well for the people of Nigeria in the coming decades. And people of Nigeria will also be proud not to move outside of Nigeria, but to stay in Nigeria and develop that great country. So by next weekend, we should be able to know exactly where everything stands in terms of who won the election and everything. And I'll get back to you guys. And hopefully it will be the right decision by the people of Nigeria. So if it's Sunday, it's the Africa Weekly Talk. God bless you guys and have a great week. Thank you and peace and love.